That's the part one keep going back to. Paige thought the call was over. I thought the call was over. If she had tapped the red button like any normal person, I probably would have gone to bed annoyed about another bad date, woken up the next morning, and kept pretending my life made sense. But she didn't hang up. Before that, the night was ordinary in the way my bad nights had become ordinary. I came home from a date that felt less like dinner and more like I had accidentally applied for a job I didn't want. I had one shoe halfway off, my jacket still on, and I was already calling Paige before I even locked my apartment door. That was our thing. I had a bad date, I called Paige. I had a good date, which was rare enough to count as a city event, I still called Paige. If something funny happened at the grocery store, I called Paige. If I saw a dog wearing little boots, I sent Paige a picture and waited for her review. She answered on the second ring. Did you get home safe? I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and leaned against the wall. Hello to you too, Mom. Don't mom me. You said the place was across town. It was 15 minutes. At night. In a rideshare. With a driver named probably Kyle. His name was actually Kyle. Paige made a sound like she had personally solved a case. See? I knew it. Men named Kyle drive like they're trying to beat a storm that doesn't exist. I laughed for the first time in 2 hours. That was how fast she did it. I could walk in irritated, tired, feeling like I had wasted a whole evening, and somehow within 30 seconds she had me standing in my hallway smiling like an idiot. So? She asked. How was she? I kicked off my other shoe and walked toward the kitchen. Do you want the polite version or the version where I wonder if she was sent by a dating app to make me delete it? Oh, the second one. Always the second one. I opened the fridge, stared at nothing, then shut it again. She asked me where I see myself in 5 years before the appetizers came. That's not that bad. Then she asked what my biggest weakness was. Paige went quiet for half a second, then said, was she holding a clipboard? She should have been. I almost asked if there was a parking validation at the end of the interview. Paige laughed, but it came softer than usual. I noticed it, but not enough to stop. That was one of my problems back then. I noticed things with Paige, but only the easy things. Her tone, her jokes, whether she was tired, whether she was eating cereal for dinner again. I didn't notice the stuff that would have made me responsible for knowing. I moved to the couch and dropped down, phone pressed to my ear. At one point she asked what my relationship with my mother was like. Okay. That one is a little much for pasta. She said it explains how men communicate. I mean, Paige. What? I'm not saying she's right. I'm saying I would have enjoyed watching your face. You would have made it worse. I would have ordered dessert and asked follow-up questions. That was Paige. Quick, warm, always ready with the exact sentence that made the room feel less heavy. We had been like that for almost 6 years, ever since college, when she sat next to me in a campus cafe because every other table was taken. I offered her the seat. She told me my laptop stickers were trying too hard, and somehow that turned into late-night food runs, cheap movie marathons, and phone calls that lasted until one of us started mumbling. People always thought we were together. Friends, co-workers, even my aunt once after seeing one picture of us at a barbecue. I always denied it fast, like the speed of my answer proved something. No, we're just friends. Paige usually just smiled when people said it. Sometimes she'd raise her eyebrows at me like I was making a speech nobody asked for. I told myself she found it funny. I told myself a lot of things. So, Paige said, bringing me back, are we deleting the apps tonight or making one more terrible choice for character development? I might be done. You say that every 3 weeks. This time I mean it. You also say that every 3 weeks. I'm serious. It's exhausting. I sit there trying to figure out if I like someone, and then halfway through I'm just thinking about how I'm going to tell you the story later. There was a pause. Not a huge one. Not the kind that stops the whole conversation. Just a small space where Paige normally would have jumped in faster. Then she said, well, at least I'm useful. I smiled, missing the edge in it. You're very useful. 5-star complaint department. Great. My dream. I sat forward a little. You okay? Yeah, just tired. Her voice brightened right away, almost too neatly. And emotionally drained from your job interview date. Imagine living it. I'm trying not to. I rubbed my face and leaned back into the couch. Thanks for answering. You always call. Yeah, but still. Another tiny pause. Then she said, yeah, you always call. I should have heard it then. I know that now. There was something sitting underneath her voice. Something she was holding with both hands. But I was comfortable. That was the thing. Paige was the safest part of my day, so I didn't question the safety. I just used it. We stayed on the phone another 10 minutes, talking about nothing. She told me Chloe had come over earlier and brought those spicy chips Paige pretended not to like. I told her my neighbor had started learning guitar again and still only knew the same 4 chords. She said if I disappeared, she would assume the guitar did it. By the time I stood up to brush my teeth, the bad date had already started fading. That was what Paige did. The world disappointed me and I called her. Then somehow the disappointment became a story instead of a wait. I'm going to sleep, she finally said. Same. Don't stay up scrolling. Don't eat spicy chips in bed. She gasped. You don't know my life. I know exactly your life. Good night, Nate. Good night, Paige. I pulled the phone away from my ear, but I didn't end the call right away. I was walking toward the bathroom, thumb hovering over the screen, when I heard a muffled sound. At first I thought it was my own apartment. The pipes, maybe, or my neighbor starting his concert from across the wall. Then I heard Paige's voice again, farther away now. Chloe, I can't keep doing this. I stopped in the hallway. The call timer was still moving. I didn't move. I just stood there in my hallway with my toothbrush in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at the call timer like it was doing something wrong by still being alive. Paige's voice sounded far away, like her phone was sitting on the couch or the kitchen counter. I could hear little sounds behind her too. A cabinet closing, a bag crinkling, Chloe saying something I couldn't catch. Then Paige said, clearer this time, no, he got home. He's fine. My first thought was that I should hang up. That was the decent thing to do, the normal thing, the thing I would have told anyone else to do if they were standing there listening to a conversation they were not supposed to hear. But I didn't. I held the phone a little closer without even thinking about it. Chloe said something, her voice lower and blurrier. Paige gave a small laugh, but it wasn't the laugh she used with me. It sounded tired. Yeah, another bad one. There was another pause. Then Paige said, because he always calls me after. Every single time. My stomach shifted a little. I told myself she was just talking about the date. Maybe teasing me. Maybe saying I was predictable, which I was. Paige had made a sport out of calling me predictable. She knew I checked the weather after already looking out the window. She knew I bought the same cereal every week, then acted surprised when I got bored of it. She knew I always said I was going to sleep, then sent her some dumb video 20 minutes later. But her voice didn't sound like teasing. Chloe said something again. This time I caught one word. Then tell him. Paige answered right away. No. That one word landed harder than it should have. I stopped breathing for a second. My apartment suddenly felt too quiet. Even the neighbor's guitar had stopped, which made the silence worse. Chloe talked for longer this time. I only heard pieces. 6 years, and not fair, and you can't. Paige cut in. I know, okay? But what am I supposed to do? He calls me after every bad date and tells me everything that went wrong. Like I'm supposed to help him find the right girl. My hand tightened around the phone. He doesn't mean it like that, Paige said. That's the problem. He has no idea what it feels like. I swallowed. There are moments where your brain tries to protect you by acting slow. Like it hears the words, but it refuses to build the sentence yet. I stood there trying to stay stupid for a few more seconds, because stupid felt safer. Chloe said something I couldn't hear. Paige's voice came back softer. I sit there and joke with him because that's what we do. And he laughs and I laugh, and then he says good night like he didn't just make me listen to him talk about another woman for half an hour. My face got warm. I thought about 5 minutes earlier. Me on the couch, telling her every detail. The interview questions. the appetizers, the awkward silence. I thought I was giving her a funny story. I thought I was calling the one person who would understand exactly how bad the night had been. I had never stopped to ask what that cost her. Paige made another sound, not quite a laugh this time. And the stupid part is I still answer. Every time. I see his name and I answer like I wasn't already waiting. Write in the comments, was Paige wrong to keep answering those calls? Or would you have done the same for the person you secretly loved? Something in my chest went still. I should have hung up then. I knew it. I knew I had already crossed a line just by standing there. But I also knew, in that same quiet second, that if I ended the call, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what she almost said. Then Paige said it. I'm in love with him, Chloe. No big speech. No music. No dramatic pause before it. Just those words in her apartment, after midnight, while I stood in my hallway with one shoe kicked near the door and my whole life quietly changing shape. I've been in love with him for a long time, she said. And I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending being his best friend is enough. My first feeling wasn't shock. That sounds strange, but it's true. It didn't feel like lightning. It felt more like walking into a room and realizing the light had been on the whole time. Like some part of me had known, or at least had been standing close enough to knowing that the truth didn't have far to travel. Paige loved me, and instead of sounding impossible, it made too much sense. Every late-night call. Every time she got quiet when I mentioned a second date. Every look people gave us when we finished each other's sentences. Every time someone asked if we were together and I answered too fast. Every woman I had sat across from in the last few years had been compared to Paige without me admitting I was doing it. Did she get my humor like Paige? Did she make silence comfortable like Paige? Did I want to tell her things first, or did I want to save the story for later, for the person who already felt like home? My mouth opened before my brain caught up. Paige. The word came out low, but the phone caught it. The background went silent. I heard something drop. Maybe a chip bag. Maybe her hand hitting the counter. Then nothing. For 2 seconds, neither of us said anything. Then Paige's voice came through, much closer now. Nate? I closed my eyes. Yeah. Oh my God. Paige. Oh my God, no. No, no, no. I'm sorry. You heard that. I leaned back against the wall because my legs suddenly didn't feel trustworthy. Yeah. How much? I didn't want to answer. Not because I wanted to lie, but because saying it would make it real for both of us. Enough, I said. She let out this tiny breath, and it hurt more than if she had yelled. Paige didn't sound angry. She sounded exposed, like I had walked in on her holding something fragile and she had no place to put it. This is not happening, she said. This is actually not happening. Paige, listen. No, please don't. Please don't do the nice Nate thing where you try to make me feel less insane. You're not insane. I just confessed to being in love with you while you were still on the phone. Accidentally. That does not make it better. I almost laughed because she sounded like herself for half a second. But then her voice broke at the edge, and the laugh disappeared from my throat. I'm so embarrassed, she said. I thought I hung up. I swear I thought I hung up. I know. And I know this is weird now. I know I made it weird. We can just, I don't know. We can pretend you didn't hear it. No. She went quiet. I said it again, firmer. No, we're not doing that. Nate, you don't get to decide for both of us that it's ruined. I'm not trying to decide for you. You are. You're already packing it away and calling it weird, so I don't have to say anything. She didn't answer. I could picture her too clearly. Standing in her living room, phone pressed tight to her ear, probably with one hand over her eyes, hair pulled back messily, that old gray blanket on the couch, the yellow lamp in the corner making everything look warmer than it felt. Finally she said, "What are you supposed to say?" "I don't know yet." "That's not comforting." "I know." Another silence stretched between us, but this one was different. It wasn't empty. It was full of everything we had both avoided putting names on. I looked at my shoes by the door, one upright, one tipped over, like I had come home from one life and didn't know where to stand in the next one. I think, I said slowly, I've been asking the wrong question for years. Paige's voice was careful. What question? I kept asking why dates didn't feel right. Why I'd sit there with someone perfectly nice and still feel like I was waiting to leave. I rubbed the back of my neck. But I think the real question is why the best part of every date was calling you after. She breathed out my name, almost like a warning. Nate. No, let me say it badly first. I'm probably going to say it badly. Okay, she whispered. I think I kept calling you after bad dates because you were the person I wanted to be with instead. She didn't respond, so I kept going because stopping felt worse. And that sounds convenient now, I know. It sounds like I heard you say something and now I'm trying to catch up in 5 seconds. But that's not what this feels like. I stared at the floor, trying to find words that didn't sound too polished, because polished would have sounded fake. The worst part is, I'm not shocked. I should be shocked, right? But I'm not. It just feels like somebody finally said the thing that's been sitting in the room with us. Paige was quiet so long I thought maybe the call dropped. Then she said, Are you saying that because you feel bad for me? No. Or because you feel guilty? No. You just heard me make a complete fool of myself. You didn't. I did. You told the truth when you thought I couldn't hear it. That is not as noble as you're making it sound. I'm not making it noble. I'm saying I'm glad I heard it. Her breath caught. I pushed off the wall and looked toward the door. My jacket was still hanging half off the chair. My shoes were right there. Nate, she said, nervous now. What does that mean? It means I don't want to do this through a phone. What? You live 4 blocks away. Nate, I'm coming over. Nate, it's late. It was late when you answered after my terrible date. That is different. Yeah, I said, picking up my shoe. This actually matters. She didn't argue right away. I could hear her breathing, uneven and quiet. Then she said, I look awful. I smiled despite everything. Paige, I once saw you eat cold noodles over the sink while wearing a sweatshirt inside out. That was a private low point. I respected it. You laughed for 10 minutes. I respected it after. A tiny laugh slipped out of her, shaky but real. It almost undid me. I put my other shoe on and grabbed my keys. I'm coming over, I said again, softer this time. And you can be embarrassed when I get there if you need to be. But don't hang up and decide this is over before I even get a say. For a second, all I heard was the faint sound of her apartment around her. Then Paige said, Okay. I opened my door. The hallway outside was cold and too bright, and my heart was beating like I was walking into something I should have understood years ago. I'll be there soon, I said. Okay, she whispered again, and for once, neither of us said goodnight. I don't remember locking my apartment door. I know I did because when I came back later my place wasn't wide open for the whole building. But I don't remember turning the key. I remember the hallway lights. I remember the elevator taking too long, even though I lived on the 2nd floor and could have taken the stairs faster. I remember stepping outside and feeling the cold hit my face like the night was trying to wake me up. Paige lived 4 blocks away. That had always been one of those convenient things we joked about. Close enough for emergency coffee. Close enough for last-minute pizza. Close enough that if one of us texted, I made too much pasta, the other one could be there before it got cold. That night, 4 blocks felt different. Every step made the call feel more real. At first, when I was still in my apartment, it was just a voice in my ear and words I couldn't unhear. But once I was outside, walking past closed stores and parked cars and the little corner market where Paige always bought mint gum, I couldn't pretend it was just a weird phone mistake. She loved me, not in a casual way, not in a maybe one day way. She had said it like she had been carrying it around for so long that even saying it out loud made her tired. And I kept thinking about how many times I had made her carry it while I sat across from someone else, checking the time under the table, already planning the story I would tell her later. I still had the phone against my ear. Neither of us talked much while I walked. We stayed connected, which somehow felt important. I could hear her moving around her apartment. A drawer opening, water running, then nothing. You still there? I asked when I reached the 2nd block. Yeah, she said. Unfortunately, I smiled a little. Unfortunately, I was hoping maybe the earth would open up and save me from this conversation. Seems dramatic. It's been a dramatic evening. Fair. A car passed slowly, headlights sliding over the sidewalk. I put one hand in my jacket pocket and kept walking. After a second, she said, "Chloe left." Oh, she said she was going to give us privacy. But really I think she just wanted to avoid being in the room when you arrived. Smart woman. She also told me not to throw my phone across the room. Also smart. I considered it. I appreciate your restraint. There was a tiny pause. Then she said, "I'm really embarrassed, Nate." I know. No, I mean really. Like move to another state embarrassed. You hate packing. I would learn. You still have boxes in your closet from when you moved in 3 years ago. Stop knowing things about me right now. That got me. I laughed under my breath, and then she did too. Barely. It was small, but it helped. Sounded like us. Not fixed, not normal, but still us. By the time I reached her building, my hands were cold and my chest felt tight. I stood outside the front door for a second, looking up at her windows. The light was on in her living room. I had seen that light from the street 100 times before and never thought anything of it. It was just Paige's place. The apartment where I had watched terrible movies, fixed a wobbly shelf, fallen asleep on her couch, eaten takeout straight from cartons because neither of us wanted dishes. Now it looked like a place I had been circling for years without knowing I was trying to get in. "I'm downstairs," I said. "I know." I looked toward the entrance. "You can see me?" "Your hair is doing that thing." I reached up automatically. "What thing?" "The anxious weather vane thing." "I don't know what that means." "You do." The buzzer clicked before I could answer. I went inside and climbed the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. My heartbeat got louder with every step. By the time I reached her floor, her door was already open a few inches. Paige stood there in sweatpants and an old green sweatshirt I had seen so many times it practically counted as a roommate. Her hair was tied up badly, with pieces falling around her face. She had no makeup on, no sharp comeback ready, no usual confident look like she already knew the punchline before everyone else. She looked nervous. That hit me harder than the confession. Paige was the person who stayed calm when I overthought everything. Paige could send back cold food without making it awkward. Paige could tell a stranger they had cut the line with a smile so polite it somehow made them apologize twice. But standing in her doorway, she looked like someone who had accidentally handed me the most delicate thing she owned and didn't know if I was about to drop it. "Hi," she said. I lowered the phone from my ear. She did the same. The call ended without either of us saying anything about it. "Hi," I said. "This is deeply humiliating. I can go stand outside and pretend I just got here for pizza. That might actually help. What toppings does emotional disaster take?" She looked at me for half a second, then laughed. Not much. Just enough for her shoulders to loosen. "Come in," she said. I stepped past her into the apartment. Everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. The warm lamp in the corner. The blue mug in the sink. The blanket half falling off the arm of the couch. A stack of books on the coffee table with one of my hoodies folded on top like it belonged there. Her place smelled like tea and that vanilla candle she said she didn't like but kept buying. I had been there so many times. I knew which floorboard made noise. I knew the cabinet where she kept the extra snacks. I knew the little dent in the wall from when I had helped move her couch and acted like we definitely had it under control. But now every ordinary thing had a new meaning. The couch wasn't just the couch. It was where she had listened to me talk about other women. The mug wasn't just a mug. It was the one she used during late calls, probably holding it while she smiled through things that hurt. Even my hoodie on the table looked like evidence. Paige noticed me looking at it and quickly grabbed it. I was going to give that back. I didn't ask. I know, but now it looks weird. It doesn't. It does. It looks like I built a small shrine to you out of laundry. It's one hoodie. For now. I smiled, and she rolled her eyes, but her face was still pink. We stood near the couch, both of us acting like we didn't know how sitting worked. Finally, Paige pointed at the cushions. You can sit. You've sat here before. Many times. Without ruining society. That's good to know. I sat on one end. She sat on the other, leaving more space between us than usual. Normally, we took up the couch like we were one person who had lost track of where our limbs belonged. Her feet near my leg. My arm over the back. A bowl of popcorn balanced between us. No thinking. No measuring. Now there was a whole careful distance between our knees. I hated it. Paige looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. No. She glanced up. No. I came here to say that to you. You're sorry I'm in love with you? No. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I'm sorry you had to say it by accident before I was brave enough to understand anything. Her expression changed, but she didn't speak. I looked at the coffee table because looking straight at her made it harder to keep my thoughts in order. I'm sorry I kept calling you after dates like it was nothing. I didn't think about what it felt like for you. I should have. You didn't know. I think I knew enough to not look too closely. That made her go still. I forced myself to look at her then. That's the part one keep coming back to. People always said there was something with us. And I shut it down so fast. Too fast. Like if I said just friends quickly enough, nobody would ask the next question. Paige's voice was quiet. And what was the next question? Why I was so scared they might be right. She pressed her lips together and looked away toward the lamp. For a while, the only sound was the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Then she said, I meant what you heard. I nodded. I need to say that while you're actually here, she continued, not while you're accidentally listening like some creep in your hallway. Technically, I was the creep. Thank you for taking responsibility. Of course. She breathed out, almost a laugh, then looked at me again. Her eyes were nervous but steady. I love you, Nate. I have for a long time. Through the jokes and the phone calls and the movie nights and the food runs and every time somebody asked if we were together and you looked like you were trying to escape a fire. I winced. Was it that bad? It was fast. Yeah. And every time you told me about someone else, I told myself I was being stupid because you were my best friend and you trusted me. And I liked that you trusted me. I didn't want to punish you for it. Her voice tightened a little. But sometimes it was hard. Sometimes I'd hang up and just sit there feeling like I had helped you look for the person I wished I could be. I didn't have an answer ready for that. There wasn't a good one. So I just said, I'm sorry. I know. I don't want you to feel like that again. She looked at me carefully, like she wanted to believe me but didn't want to make it easy for either of us. Nate, where does that leave us? The question sat between us. I looked around her apartment again. The couch, the mug, the blanket, the hoodie in her lap now because she still hadn't put it down. 6 years of ordinary things. 6 years of almost. Then I looked back at her. I think part of me knew, I said. Not clearly. Not in a way I was ready to say out loud. But I knew you were the person I wanted to call first. I knew everyone else felt temporary compared to you. I knew when something good happened, it didn't feel finished until I told you. Her eyes started to shine, but she didn't look away. I hid behind friendship, I said, because friendship felt safe. Because losing you sounded worse than being honest. But I don't think I can sit here now and pretend I don't know what you are to me. Paige whispered, and what am I? I moved closer, slowly, just enough to close part of the space between us. The center of my life, I said. And I'm done pretending it's somewhere else. She stared at me like she was afraid to blink. For the first time all night, the silence didn't feel sharp. Felt warm and terrifying and real. Paige shifted closer too, just a little. And suddenly we weren't talking like friends trying to save the old shape of things. We were sitting there inside the truth, close enough to touch it. Paige didn't move right away. She just sat there on the couch with my hoodie twisted in her hands, looking at me like she was trying to figure out if the floor was still under her. The lamp beside her made her face look softer, but her eyes were wide and careful. The center of your life, she said quietly. I nodded. Yeah. That's a big thing to say. I know. You can't say that just because I accidentally turned my phone into a disaster device. I'm not. She gave me a look, and even with everything happening, it was still very Paige. Suspicious, sharp, trying to protect herself with common sense because her heart had clearly stopped helping. Nate, she said, I need you to understand something. I'm listening. I have imagined this conversation in about 400 different ways. That many? Probably more. Don't interrupt my humiliation. Sorry. She looked down at the hoodie again. In most of those versions, you were kind. You were always kind. That was actually the problem. I knew you would never be cruel about it. I knew you'd try to save my feelings, and then I would have to sit there and pretend your kindness didn't hurt worse. That hit me in the chest. I'm not trying to be kind, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. I mean, I am, obviously. I'm not trying to be a jerk. But that's not why I'm here. I shifted closer. Not too much. Just enough that the space between us stopped feeling like a warning sign. I'm here because when I heard you say it, everything made sense in a way I wasn't ready for. She stared at me. I let out a breath. I'm the one who was late, Paige. Her face changed a little. I kept acting like I was searching for something out there, I said. Like the right person was going to show up at a restaurant or on an app or across some table asking me weird 5-year plan questions. But every time it went badly, I didn't feel relieved until I called you. And every time it went fine, I still wanted to call you. That should have told me something. Paige's mouth pressed into a small line, like she was trying not to react too quickly. I kept going because I needed her to hear it clearly, not halfway, not hidden behind jokes. I think I was checking in with the person I wished I'd gone out with instead. She blinked fast and looked away. I almost reached for her hand, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to rush her just because I had finally caught up to something she had been living with for years. I know that doesn't fix every night I made you listen, I said. And I know I can't ask you to just forget how that felt. But I'm not saying this because I feel sorry for you. I don't. I'm saying it because I'm done being the guy who calls the woman he wants and then pretends she's just the person he tells stories to. Paige let out a shaky little laugh. What? I asked. She covered part of her face with her hand. I hate that that was actually a good sentence. I've been practicing for about 4 blocks. Those were productive blocks. The second one was rough. Almost got hit by a delivery bike. That did it. She laughed for real, still shaky, still overwhelmed, but real. The sound filled the room and loosened something in me that had been tight since the hallway. Then she looked at me again, and the laughter faded into something warmer. I really have been in love with you, she said. For a long time. I know. No, I need to say it when you're sitting right here. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. I love you. Not because you're familiar. Not because you're easy. Not because you're my routine. I love you because you're you. Because you make my day feel less heavy. Because when something happens, good or bad, you're still the person I want to tell first. I swallowed hard. And I was scared, she said. Because being your best friend was better than losing you completely. So I told myself I could handle it. I told myself I could be mature and normal and not make it your problem. You didn't make it my problem. I kind of did. You forgot to hang up. That's not a strategy. It was a very poor strategy. Terrible execution. She smiled, and this time it stayed. I moved a little closer again. Paige. Her eyes dropped to my mouth for half a second, then came back to my eyes. That tiny look changed the air in the room. For 6 years, we had been close without thinking about it. Shoulders touching during movies. Her head on my arm when she was tired. My hand on her back guiding her through crowded places. We had crossed little lines so often that we stopped seeing them as lines at all. But this was different. This time, I knew exactly what I was doing. I lifted my hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. She just watched me, breathing a little unevenly, as my fingers touched her cheek. Her skin was warm. I had hugged her 100 times. I had leaned against her, sat beside her, bumped into her in tiny kitchens and crowded sidewalks. But touching her like that, carefully, on purpose, made my whole body go quiet. You sure? I asked. Paige's eyes softened. Nate, she whispered. I've been sure for years. So I kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing crashed. Nobody said the perfect thing right before. It was soft and careful, almost nervous at first, like both of us were afraid one wrong move would wake us up from it. Then she kissed me back. And that was the moment I understood how much of my life had been standing right beside this without stepping into it. Her hand moved to my shirt. My thumb brushed her cheek. The couch creaked a little under us, and for some reason that made both of us smile against each other, because of course even the furniture had to comment. When we pulled apart, we stayed close. Paige looked at me like she was waiting for the world to tilt back into place. This definitely changes everything, she said. Yeah. Her hand was still holding my shirt. You sound calm. I'm not. Good. I'm actually having about 7 separate panic attacks. That sounds more like you. I smiled. But good ones. She leaned her forehead against mine for a second. I can't believe this happened because I forgot to hang up. That was a pretty big mistake. The best mistake I've made all year. All year? It's only been a few months. Don't ruin my line. Sorry. She kissed me again, quicker this time, warmer, like she was testing the fact that she was allowed to. I kissed her back because I was allowed to, too, and that felt almost impossible. We stayed on that couch for a long time after, not doing anything dramatic, just talking, laughing at the wrong moments, going quiet at the right ones. She admitted Chloe had been telling her to say something for months. I admitted my sister once asked if Paige and I were secretly married because I talked about her like she was already family. Paige looked way too pleased about that. When I finally left, it was late enough that the hallway outside her apartment was completely still. She stood in the doorway in that green sweatshirt, my hoodie now officially stolen again, and smiled at me like she still couldn't believe I was leaving as something different than I had been when I arrived. A week later, I still called Paige at night. That part didn't change. The second ring barely had time to finish before she answered, just like always. Did you get home safe? She asked. I smiled into the phone, walking up the stairs to my apartment. Yes, Paige. Good. But I'm starting to think you just like hearing my voice. She paused, and I could hear the smile before she even spoke. Maybe I do. And for the first time, neither of us had to hide behind the habit. The best part of my day had never been the call. It had always been Paige.